Today's topic is how to build a resume for DA and BI jobs. DABI stands for Data Analytics and Business Intelligence. So we'll start off with jobs, because you can't aim with other targets. So let's look at the target first, and then we talk about how to build an effective resume that will help you get interviews. I usually bookmark. I bookmark this search, and every day I can click on this, and I will get different jobs, and I will tell you the secret. And you see, this is a long list of keywords and key phrases. You see the keyword. If it's more than one word, I will put them within quotes. So this is a key phrase, and it's a long list. And I'm in Toronto, so I narrow down to the city of Toronto, Ontario, but you can change that. You can also change the radius to be more than 25 kilometers. The most important thing is age. I configured this parameter to be the last 24 hours. This is very, very important. So if you do this, every day you click on the same link, it's going to generate different jobs. It's going to generate only jobs that got posted in the last 24 hours. And I think this is probably the best way to search and apply. And if you click this every day and you screen and select maybe 10 jobs to apply for, and you apply for 10 jobs a day and then every day, and you always apply for fresh new jobs that got posted in the last 24 hours. And make sure your resume will appear in the top 30 and top 50. I recommend our students to do this first thing in the morning, before 8:30, apply before everybody else does. So let's very quickly go through some of these jobs and see. So this search today generates only 42 jobs. I'm pretty sure I can select 10 out of 42. So if you tell me there are not enough jobs to apply for, I don't believe you. And this, list of 42 jobs are very small. So normally I get 100 and 200, and when the market is better, I probably get 300 to 600. I'm not kidding. This is true. So AWS big data engineer, and this is Tata Consultancy Services. It's an India-based consulting firm, and this is Scotiabank. Everybody knows. Again, data engineering, data management, AML, ATF. This is something you need to know and search. It's anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing. This is something you will need to research to prepare for the interview if you get one. And this is Cadillac. It's a dealership and BI developer. Sometimes you have different title, BI consultant, BI analyst, and BI engineer, but doesn't really matter. The job is to develop dashboards. So we see a number of people trying to introduce themselves, and that's great. And also people saying that they're looking for entry-level data analysts. Entry-level, intermediate, or senior, and we'll talk about that a little after, how to position yourself for different level of jobs and for different type of jobs, and in different industries. So that's, will this same type of search work for LinkedIn too? Yes. You could always Google search advanced search. Indeed, advanced search LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure you can configure some of these parameters, and then you save that as a favorite, and then every day you click on the same link. But if the link doesn't generate the right jobs, you can fine tune the search. I mean, we're in this business, right? We are using data to improve the search and decision. And I'm pretty sure we can do better than just type in data analyst. And this is something you should do, not to fine tune your search criteria, so it always generates certain type of jobs. Okay, this is marketing analyst. As I said before, if you add the word analyst to any function, there is one. There exists a role, a job for that. So you can replace marketing with sales, with operations, with financial, and I'm pretty sure there is a role like that, right, in most companies. And here it's specifically say CRM. So that's customer relationship management, and digital marketing associate, and data engineer again. And some of the companies are familiar, some are not. Database administrator, this is more technical. This is like a senior role in IT. Data center associate. This is more relevant. E-commerce, email marketing specialist. Data management analyst. This is more on the DA side. And you will see DA/BI jobs. So DA happens before BI. The data has to be ready, for dashboard, right? So this is data management. So you will do a lot of data prep, like collection, processing, and transformation of data. Data analytics. So, sorry, this is Adobe Analytics, and this is very similar to Google Analytics. So Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics are pretty much standards in digital analytics. And once again, you should know a little bit of business, a little bit of data. And this is data engineer again. Senior financial analyst. So you see, in finance accounting department, you also have analyst role. Big data developer with consultancy services. So this is RBC, CFO, winter financial analyst. This is the contract role. Would you mind if we go to the second page? This is Tangerine, so part of Scotiabank, senior manager, fraud analytics. Once again, fraud risk is just one type of risk management. It's a little different from AML, but related. As your data engineer, Cognizant, this is consulting firm. SAP, this is more specialized. I think you can ignore that if you don't have the expertise in this. Software engineer, no, ignore that. So Affirm is a fintech company based in the US, but they do have operations in Canada. Procurement, inventory specialist, absolutely. So in supply chain, you will find roles in data as well. Hydro One, so this is utility. Master data coordinator, this is probably more on the DA side. Reliability analyst and change management. I think this has less to do with data. Taco Bell, so this is a restaurant. hospitality, digital marketing, you know. And remember we mentioned Adobe Analytics and Google Analytics are two standard platforms for digital marketing. So this data science, Intech is insurance company. Data analyst left. This is a very big company from the US. I think it's similar to Uber. And RBC, so this you see this role again. PwC is consulting, and they also hire data roles. And Adobe Analytics again, Epsilon, I think this is a platform in capital market. Okay, so I think that's enough. I'm just trying to show you there are enough jobs. Today is very, very unique. We only have 42. I send you this link, and you can test that. So click on the link and save it as your favorite, and play with it every day, and just to feel the pulse of the market and see the job market, and is it getting better? Is getting worse? Personally, I think it doesn't really matter if the economy is doing great or economy is doing very badly, because all you need is just one job, right? If you can find that one job, and the macro economic statistics doesn't really concern me, and that's my opinion, anyways. So I see that I really like the turnout. We have 56 people. It's been a while. We haven't had that kind of number. Great. So, like always, I'm going to show you two tangible use cases. I'm going to show you two very simple projects to show you how to understand a job within the bigger context of the business or the vertical functional area and the horizontal process, and how to define a role. You know, what is the work and what is the work relationships and you will have with other people in other departments and teams. How do you communicate up or down and across in order to get the job done, right? And what is the dependency? You know, sometimes you cannot really start your work until somebody else has finished their work and give it to you. And the same way, somebody else cannot really start their job unless you finish yours and deliver the work in progress to them. Okay. So with that, before I get there, I really want to define BI very quickly. So this is the Business Intelligence Career Guide, and Adam, the program manager, actually has posted the link. So you can actually go there and to download the career guide. BI is to close the gaps between business and data and insight, and insight and action and outcome. So there are almost always gaps, you know, between business data, insight, action, outcome, and BI is to close that gap. Okay, and this is something I want you to remember. My personal mentor told me this long time ago, and he said, you know, almost any DABI project can be summarized into 3 steps, or maybe 3 questions. The first question is to ask what happened, and the second question is to ask why did it happen, and the third question is to ask then what can we do about it, right? So this is probably the trends and patterns and relationships, and this is the root causes and that cause the KPI to go up or down. So the trends and the drivers. And then the third question is really about how to monetize, you know, this if it's an opportunity, or how to solve this if this is a problem, right? Okay, so go down. I want to show you a typical BI process. So this is where you see a typical BI process starts with BA, business analysis. And this is to ask yourself, or if you can ask other people, you can do research, you can Google around, you just have to find out how to make money in this business. And how to, what is the core process and what are the typical decisions that people make at different levels. And remember the hierarchy of work. CEO probably and all the C-level executives, they work at the strategic level, so they make big decisions. And VPs and directors and managers, and they work at the technical level, and they make decisions that have medium to near-term consequences. And we also have employees who work on the floor from day to day. They also make decisions at operational level, right? So all these people are your customers. You have to support decisions at all three levels: strategic, technical, and operational. And after you understand the business, and then you can start data analysis. Nowadays, almost anything will requires the help of data. So we use data to answer questions, solve problems, support decisions, and create value for the business and customers. So you need to ask yourself, to solve a very specific, business problems, what data do I need and where to get them, right? So once you know that, you will need to probably, make friends with somebody in IT, because they are the guardian of database. And behind every application, there's a database. So meaning the data is everywhere, even internal data is everywhere. So you have to find out the data dictionary or the schema of the data, so you know where to get what. Okay, so preparing data for analysis is 1.5 of the battle. So you need to source data, and you need to do some pre-processing. And then after that, you need to do EDA. So these are very typical steps you will need to take to get there. And then you will need to generate summary statistics, and from that, you will see if there is any issue with the data. And if there is, you will need to treat them, you will need to detect and solve the data issues first before you move on. And in general, this is summarized into an ETL process. So it's extract, transform, and finally, the clean and data in the right format into a data model. So then this is data modeling. And you could have data from everywhere, but end of the day, you have to connect them somehow. So data model a lot of times is a shortcut for you to understand the business model, and we'll show you that and what we mean. Data model is a shortcut to understanding business model. So many of you have heard of ERD, entity relationship diagram, and some of you have heard of schema or star schema. Some of you have heard of relationship database management system. And the idea is a database is essentially a collection of related tables. So you can break it down. You can break down the database into tables and columns and keys. And then in order to connect the tables, you will need to use the primary key and the foreign key to create one-to-many relationships between dimension tables and fact tables. These are just foundational skills you will have to master before you move on to the BI step. So you can use data visualization and BI interchangeably, but it's essentially storytelling with data, right? So end of the day, and you will have your dimensions. That's how business people look at KPIs from different angles and different dimensions. And you will need to define a set of KPIs to measure the success. And then you will do a lot of operations like roll up and drill down, slice and dice, sort and rank. And we will do a lot of that in order to find the trends and drivers. And sometimes you do conditional formatting too. You use the green, amber, and red to stand for something good and neutral or bad. And then you can visualize trends and drivers, and then you can present the insight. The insight includes conclusions and the recommendation. The recommendation have to be actionable, executable. So recommendations with real impact on the business. So now we're talking about the business. So we start with the business needs and requirements, and we end with the real impact on the business, which are one of the four: revenue growth, cost reduction, efficiency gain, quality improvement. Okay, so I just walk you through this real quick, so you have some rough idea before we get down to the details. Okay, let me just take a look at, can I increase the font size? So this is almost the end. I hope you're okay with this. All right, so let me just go to the first project. Let me think, just give me a second. Okay, so the first project, actually both projects are related to home or real estate. So, but let me just take you to the first project. It's called, over years, we have collected many tasks from different employers, and sometimes we mask them, so you don't know the source or the identifying information of that company or business. So today we're gonna look at Capri. So this is a real company. It's a real company. Capri stands for Canadian Apartment Properties REIT, REIT. For those of you who know REIT, REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. So it's listed on the stock exchange, and you can buy and sell units of a REIT. So I'm going to show you the raw data first. There are two subfolders. These are simplified examples. If I open RE, you see only 2 months worth of data. How can you tell? So this is RE. I can tell you what RE means, but it will become really meaningful a little after. So RE represents renewal. So if you have you been renting before? If I was a renter, so I knew. Usually you sign a 1-year contract with the corporation, but when 1 year is up for renewal, if you decide to stay, and then you can just renew it. So it's called renewal, so RE. Otherwise, it's a turnover. So if you are the original renter, but after a year you decide to relocate or go somewhere else, and then you will move out. So that unit becomes available. A new renter moves in, and then probably new rent will be negotiated. And this is a perfect opportunity for the corporation to increase rent. Okay. Otherwise, in certain provinces in Canada, like Ontario or BC, there's rent control. If you stay, in the same unit, by law, by provincial regulations, you cannot increase the rent, maybe more than 2%, depending on the local regulations. So for the corporations, they always prefer, you move out and somebody else moves in, because they can increase the rent. Okay, so I want to show you what the data look like. It's actually really messy. And by the name of the data set, you can tell this is 2023, and this is June the 2nd. So this is from June the 2nd. So let's take a look at it. So usually I right click and I add it with Notepad++. So Notepad++ is probably the best way to look at the data in text format, TXT. Let's just take a look. I don't know what you think of this. I think this data is actually quite messy. Why? Because look, so this is what this is the same as the part of the cloud, but we'll very quickly understand. You see, this is the runtime. You can see, so you generate this data set on 2023, June the 2nd. But the data is actually for what? You can see year, month. The actual data is for 2023 January. So this is the runtime, and this is the report time. And it's very important to know the difference between the two, okay? And so this is program whatever, but we understand this. And then you have the site. So a little bit background about this. So site is a building, is the apartment building. And this is a rental object. So this is actually a unit number, okay? So this is the lease start, and this is, in fact, let me show you the data dictionary, and that's probably easier. Somebody said the rent is way cheaper than San Francisco. Of course, but it's actually quite expensive in Canada. Okay, so let me show you. This is much easier for you to see. Okay, so we have two kinds of scenario: renewal and turnover, right? So I can show you the actual columns. So we have site, and we have unit. So you can see this is site, and this is unit. And you have the lease date. So this is the lease start date, and the renewal. This is the renewal date, renewal start date. So this is the original lease start date. So this is the renewal date if you decide to renew. Okay, and then what else? So yeah, you will see expenses. So this is actually the rent, and you also have some expenses of parking, the locker, and other. AGI stands for above guideline increase dollars. So I think this represents how much you can increase the rent by regulation. So then you have the total rent, and this is an important thing, prior lease. So this bunch is the current one. This is the prior. So you can calculate the difference between the two, so you can calculate how much the rent has increased, right? So once again, you see the prior rent, the prior parking, locker, other, and AGI, right? What else? So days vacant. So days vacant only applies to turnover. So if the old tenant moved out and the new tenant, before they get a new tenant, probably you will need to fix up, the unit. You need to clean it inside out. You will need to do some simple renovation. So And there might be, 2 weeks or 1 month weekend, plus the time you need to show and to find a new tenant. And it could be, a couple weeks, before you can find the new tenant. So that also represent the rent you lost, during the days vacant. But the upside is you can increase the rent, right? In a market like this. So days vacant and also the unit subtype. So in a moment, we will see what does this mean, right? And also the province, the data looks simple, but if we go back here, the actual data will look like this. So you see the same pattern repeats. And then what's the difference between this and this? It's the same year, months. I think it's just, different ranges, but we will need to combine them, right? But we will need to remove all these garbages that we don't need, right? Yeah. So if we can take a look at, so this is renewal and this is turnover. We can also take a look at this. You can tell it's similar, but not exactly the same. Okay, so knowing this is important, before we start working with the data. So I just want to show you, the data first and the data analysis process, and then data modeling, and then the data visualization in 3 steps. So let's go to transform data. Okay, so imagine if IT is able to drop a file here, for every month, and you will be able to build connections to that public folder. And you only need to build this once. So the same query will be able to read data and upload and also update, the report and dashboard. So real quick, if we go to the first step, so this tells you we have 2 files in that folder, right? So we consume the data, in a folder. And then you can remove other column. The actual data is here inside the content. And everything else is just properties that you don't need. You only need this, and you also need this. Why? Because you need the RE, because RE represents renewal. So we can remove all the other columns. Then I'm going to add a custom column. So what is this? So this basically says CSV document. The delimiter is pound and tab within the bracket. So this is how you extract the TXT data from this column, from the content column. Okay, and somebody said this is not CSV, this is TXT. It's quite different. So it's separated by tab, not by comma. Okay. So after I get this, and then I can expand it. And then you have this. So remember, so we have content, we have the name, and then we have the actual data all across. See, amazing. It's really, really great. Now we can remove other column. So what did we remove? Okay, so we decided to remove the columns we don't need. So after the initial analysis, we decided to take only the columns in red. So we will have months. So we have to derive the months. So we will need site unit, total rent, and prior total rent, and days vacant, and unit subtype and province. So at a high level, these columns would be enough for us to perform the analysis and create a dashboard. So let's go back. So this is how we decided to have name column 2 and 3. You can tell the right columns by the content. So after this, it's a lot shorter, right? See, it's a lot shorter. So you can tell we have site. So this is unit, total rent, prior total rent, and this is subtype, and this is province. And then we can filter the rows. What did we do? Filter. So it does not equal, blank, and does not equal star. Okay. So after that, you will not see the garbage. But prior to this, you will see things like this. You will see things like this, right? So we don't want them. And then we filter the data we don't, the rows we don't want. And then we can promote the first row to be the header. So then we have a new header. And then we can filter the rows again. I think we don't want the other headers used, because before this, you still have more headers. You will see the headers probably. Oh, that's because we get 2 months from renewal. So we use one row to become the header, but the other one we have to filter out too. So then after this, we can filter. We can split the column by delimiter, which column. So that's this guy, right? So I can split this, so we can have RE, we can have the months and year. We can have months and year. And then everything else is garbage. So we split. And then I need this, I probably don't need this. So I can remove that. And then I can rename the column. So this becomes the contract type. This is the month. This is the site. This is unit. Total rent, prior total rent. So before renewal. And then you have the unit type, and you have the province. And then you specify the data type. So by now, I have the clean data set. So I do the same to turnover. So after turnover, and I have something like this. And then I can actually merge these two. I can combine these two. But if I combine them, do I have a problem? I don't have a problem, because I have the contract type that tells you this is a renewal and that is a turnover, right? And then I also added a column. What did we add? Oh, I put site and unit together. So imagine if you have the room number, this is, let's say this is the room number. If you have the same room number in 2 different buildings, and then this is not unique, you cannot use this as a primary key, right? But what if I put site and the unit number together, and then they should become unique, right? So that's like composite primary key. Those of you who have studied database, you should know, right? So I added a column. If I move to the end, you will see site unit. And I put a pipe in between. So this becomes our key. And then I change the type of this site unit. So now I have the total data in just one big data set, okay? And then I finished the data management, or data cleaning. So let me just close this. I walk you through this real quick so you know how we process the data. And after that, I have, this is not even a data model because there is only just one flat file. This is the data set. So it's not so much data modeling, but we go through this process so you know we have the simplest data model with just one flat file. And then after that, we will need to create some measures. So on the right, you will see some measures. So I create simple measures. I want to calculate the total number of sites. So if you look at the formula, it's very, very simple. So you just count, this count distinct, this the name of the table combined, and this is the name of the column. So you can just count distinct site, and this becomes the number of buildings. And I want to count the number of units. So you can count site unit, right? And this is also distinct count. And then I want to calculate the rent for the current lease. So I can just combine total rent. And this is the previous one. You can just combine prior total rent. It's very, very straightforward. And then with the rent current and rent previous, I can calculate the rent increase, right? I can calculate, first of all, I can calculate the average rent current, which is very simple. So the rent current divided by the number of units. So this is the average rent for the current lease. And I can calculate the average rent for the previous lease. Once again, it's rent previous divided by the number of units. And then I can calculate the increase of the average rent. So the average rent increase percentage. So you can use average rent current minus average rent previous, and then divided by average rent previous. So very, very simple math. So that way I calculate 7 KPIs. So then with that, we are able to create this dashboard. Just mind you, this is a very simple exercise our students receive, and they have only just one day to finish this exercise. And then they need to present to the employer in the second round of the interview. And those of you who are from Canada, I think you can understand this very easily. And this is a big enough company, Capri. You can see the company has a big portfolio of 374 apartment buildings. That's significant, right? And they have 26,000 units, and the rent of current lease is 40 million, and the average rent previous is 1,527, and the average rent increase percentage is only 1.9%. And probably most of you have heard, the rent has increased a lot, right? But not for the apartment building. If you're the corporation, if you work for the corporation who owns, 374 apartment buildings, this is actually a really good business, but with a lot of unrealized revenue potential. I'll tell you why. Okay. So first of all, you can see a very simple donut chart. You can see the units, broken down by contract type. And you can also see the majority, of the units are renewal. And let me tell you what this means. Some of the tenants or renters have been living in the same unit more than 10 years. And particularly in Ontario and British Columbia, 2 provinces that have rent control in place. So by law, and the laws and regulations protect the tenants or protect the renters. So by law, the corporation cannot increase the rent, when it's time to renew the lease, and if the tenant decides to stay. I believe it's less than 2%, and that's the reason why you only see, the average rent increase is 1.9%, and majority of the tenants decide to stay. Why? Because if they move out, there is no way they can find a unit that's this cheap. It's impossible. So they have to stay. And my daughter is in third year university, and my wife and I, in order to find a place for her to stay, near the school, we actually went to different apartment buildings, and we talked to the superintendent, we talked to the super, and we were told almost every single apartment building has full occupancy. There's no vacancy at all. And the last time they had a unit that's available, was probably sometime end of last year. Ever since September last year, it's very rare that you see a unit that the tenant move out and it becomes a turnover. So this tells you 97% of the inventory is renewal. And if you look at this graph, average rent increase percentage by contract type, for turnover, you can increase by 25%. That's a lot. Every year, this is every year. But for renewal, the average rent increase percentage is only 1.05%. So they average out to 1.9%. So this is the mix, the composition. And this is the percentage increase by contract type. So these two graphs in the donut chart and the column chart tells you, you could say this might be unfair to the corporation, but the law is to protect the renters. That's why, and the corporations, they wish there will be more turnovers, and then it could generate more revenue. So I don't know if you have any question. If you do, you can just text me the questions. So the data is not public. Is kind of public. Only the applicants would receive this data set, but obviously it's masked, right? So you can't really tell the actual location. You only see the serial number. Okay, so what else? What other information is available? The average rent increase percentage by province. So you can see Alberta and Saskatchewan and Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. Now, the average rent increase is a lot higher. Only the two provinces with rent control, Ontario and BC, and that's also where most of the units are. And you can tell, sites and units. So Ontario has the most units, followed by BC and Quebec, right? And you can also see the rent current needs by unit type. So the 2 bedrooms are probably the most popular. So this one generates $15 million, and 1 bedroom is 10 million, followed by 3 bedrooms. Then you have townhouses, and some of these are very small in terms of unit or revenue. Okay. So Vicky asked the question, what does this have to do with resume building? But with this, you can build a resume. I mean, just get to what does this do with resume building? Okay, so first of all, your resume will need to have a section called skills. So the skills section, you can break it down into data and business. And if I were to do that, I will include business and data and communication. So three most important aspects, or three most important skill sets you will need to showcase. So these are data. So you will see database systems, data governance, and data analysis and reporting, and data visualization and storytelling. And here you see business domain knowledge and business analysis and BI, business intelligence development lifecycle. Okay. And before data, you have foundational skills such as programming. And you also have advanced Excel, statistics, and machine learning. Okay. So just by looking at the categories, and you will see what kind of skill that is required of the data analyst and BI analyst. One comment from, in my opinion, is trying to show a project. Yeah, we could probably use in our resume. Yes. Should we upload our project into a GitHub account from James? Yes. So basically, you will need to have a resume and with the link to your portfolio. And in the bootcamp, we ask every student to build a portfolio website. So if the employer doesn't have a chance to see your portfolio, they will at least see some of the project experience. But some of our students are so creative, and they have the first page resume, and the second page some of the work samples. So it's just like a portfolio, but just one page. And so that can generate enough interest, and the employer might click on the link that takes them to your portfolio website. Okay, so that's the idea. But on the resume, so today is not about portfolio building, it's about resume building, but your resume should have a link to your portfolio website. But for the resume, after your name, email and phone number, and portfolio website, and you should have skills, a big heading skills, and then after that you have these many categories. And you don't need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You don't need 10, but I suggest you have 6 to 8. Okay, and you have both data and business. So I'm just going to take you to 2 examples. Programming, and for a DA or BI job, I think SQL is extremely important. SQL is a database system and a programming language to communicate with that database system. So most companies' internal data is structured as SQL database. So you need to know SQL really, really well. And for DA and BI role, SQL has higher priority over Python. So you put SQL first and followed by Python. Okay. And this is how you showcase your SQL skills. And you, as an advanced SQL user, you can handle complex join, nested query, and window function. And for Python, largely speaking, you will need to be good with pandas, data frame. Okay. And database system, for instance, if you have worked with MySQL database, SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, Postgre, and then you should list them all. All right. But these are also important, ERD, relational database management system, star schema, dimensional data modeling. Data governance is more about, how to detect and solve data quality issue. Yeah. And what about business? So your strength is your professional range. So you know both business and data and communication. So business domain knowledge, you put CRM, for instance, email campaign, customer segmentation, for instance, RFM, so recency frequency monitoring. So this is just one kind of technique to generate customer segments based on the demographic. This is actually purchase behavior, product recommendation, market basket analysis, digital marketing, and to solve the problem of marketing attribution, financial planning, and analysis. Okay. Okay, there is a comment from Harvard. Hiring managers might prefer domain experience, but it's never a must, I believe. Showcasing the experience using the tools in Hanger to learn more about the domain using basic knowledge to solve analytics problem statements should be good. That is true. That is true. But when everybody, passed the technical round, and you probably need a tiebreaker if you really want to stand out. You're basically playing a game of exceeding employers' expectations. So if they look at your resume and knowing that you have never worked in an industry, but you're technically strong, you're smart, you can learn, but this is not enough. Business domain knowledge, a lot of it, you can get as indirect experience, secondhand experience. Sometimes I joke, this is just like secondhand smoke. You can learn from other people, you can learn from the internet, you can learn from ChatGPT, you can learn from a project like this, right? So what you need to do is the employer has an expectation of you, and your job is to exceed that expectation. So employers will be impressed by how much you know by researching and doing a project, and then you showcase your understanding of the business and the process and the functional area and how people work together, and also the decisions in the process and the areas of challenges and even the frustration, the emotion. And that when you show that to the employer, I think right away the employer will click with you because you truly really exceed their expectations. Yeah. And there's also an element, because they know that only because you care so much, otherwise you wouldn't walk such a distance to do so much research to prepare for this interview, right? So that is actually important. So let me just go down to this project we have just walked you through. So this is Canadian Real Estate Investment Trust, REIT. So this is in the real estate industry. This is just one way for you to write your project experience. So you can write the name of the project like this, just like the name of the company, and then maybe a pipe, and then the industry. So you can use a different format, and maybe the tools you use, and then maybe the months and year, but several bullets. What do you choose to put here? Different people have different strategy. Different people have different strategy. Well, there's a question, Jordan. Is there any way to get access to the sample resume? You can do screenshot. It doesn't prevent you from doing screenshot. Now, how do I find data sets with millions of records from DP? You can definitely find data sets with millions of records. And Kaggle is one, but I don't use Kaggle that much because too many people use that. I know Microsoft actually has some demo database. It's some of the tables of those databases actually have 8 million rows, so sometimes 17 million rows. It's actually very, very big. And those are really good databases that you can try. Yeah. Data.gov, public data, yes. But if it's private sector, if it's for business, you may look elsewhere. Okay, so back to this project. So what do you put in here? So you probably want to talk about the process a little bit, right? And how do you get the data? How do you process the data? And how do you create the data model? How do you define a KPI? And what kind of insight you generate, you extract from the data? And what are your conclusions, and what are your recommendations? What kind of impact this will have on the business? So somehow you will have to show a little bit of that. But because of the limitation, you only have very limited space. So you just have to write the bullet points in a way that people can actually understand it. Yeah. So you can be technical, but you want to make sure your bullet points and the writing block should make sense to even people with non-technical background. Okay. So for instance, the first bullet, you put automated data reporting process. Is this true? I think it's true, because if you look at the raw data, there are TXT files, right? So you tell IT to drop the files in that public folder, and it's in the same format for every month. And you only need to build the queries and collection once, right? And we, in this example, had only 2 months worth of data. What if we put 12 months for a year? And the same process that you build within Power BI, within Power Query, still works for 12 months. All you need to do is press the refresh button, and even that can be automated. You can do scheduled refresh, right? So when you say you automated the data and reporting process, you feel comfortable saying that because it's true, it's truthful, and this is something you did, right? And eliminate manual steps. Is that true? That's also true. So, for instance, you could have people trying to read that TXT file within Excel and manually clean them, right? But in this case, you eliminated the manual steps and significantly improved operational efficiency. This whole bullet point true? It's very true. So when I write this, I sleep well and I feel comfortable. And if the employer asks me questions about this first bullet, I can back it up, right? Because I have experienced this project. I have lived and breathed through it. So I feel very confident and comfortable about this one bullet point. And the second bullet, created dynamic interactive dashboard to visualize, to visualize sites, units, rent increase, rent divided by unit, and rent increase divided by unit by province, and contract type, unit type. Is this true? Oh, this is totally true. Even you could testify these are true because you were with me, right? So sites, if people don't understand sites, you can change it to buildings, and sites, units, rent increase. Some of you may argue, and some of these are dimensions, some of these are actually measures, but the count of, or the number of sites are also measures, right? So measures, measure, this is measure, this is also measure. So it's measures by dimension. I hope you realize. And every single tables or charts or graphs are measures by dimension. And when you run SQL query, It's also select, measures them by group by dimension, right? It's the same thing. So these are dimensions: province, contract type, unit type, 3 dimensions. And the purpose, you can't just write down the process without a purpose, right? The purpose is to identify opportunities for revenue maximization. This is so important. This is so important. Identify opportunities. Is there any pockets of opportunity to grow sales, to grow the revenue? Yeah, absolutely. I think after that little demo, everybody realized that, if we have the choice, we want to change our renewals into turnovers, if possible. Okay, identify opportunities for revenue maximization. And the third one, this is something you could do, from that, build pro forma financial statement. So some of you probably come from accounting or financial analysis background. You can do that. You can build a pro forma financial statement based on revenue drivers. Now, what is the revenue driver? Average rent increase is definitely a revenue driver on turnover versus renewal. And this is something you get from the data. You can calculate the average, and with this assumption, you can forecast out, right? If you get more turnovers from the renewals, and because average rent increase is 24% versus 2%, you're going to increase the revenue by a lot, right? Okay, are you with me? The last one is recommended strategy to mitigate the risk. What is the risk? Okay, for renewals, so the rent increase is capped at 2.5. Oh, so this is the actual data. How do you find this? It's very easy. You can Google it, and you will find it. It's public information. So for renewals, rent increase is capped at 2.5 in Ontario and 2.0 in British Columbia. And this is even below the rate of inflation. And we know this is a risk. And it's a policy risk. In Ontario, before the Ford administration, and it's Catherine Wayne, right? I remember. I think she reversed. Before this, there was no rent control, and she actually put in place the rent control. And then Douglas Ford, our premier, he changed. He didn't fully, change it. I think he changed some of it. So for the building that was built after a year, I don't remember what year. So it's for both condos and apartment buildings. So for the building that was built after a year, there's no limitation, there's no cap. But for the buildings built before that year, the original rent control policy was still in place, and that was put in place by Catherine Wayne, right? So for turnovers, remember, for the turnovers, you will lose some rent during the days vacant for renovation, listing, and showing. Okay. So what do you think? What do you think? Given your background is not real estate, do you think some of this is common sense? Some of this is what you get from internet, and from some of this is what you get. You know what you can get? Let me show you. Because this is a public company, you can definitely get the annual report. You can get some, presentations. I don't remember what this is. Let me just take a look. Oh, this is just the original description of the case. Yeah, so you can definitely download the annual report, and you will find the most important KPIs. Yeah, and that will give you some hint, right? So once again, your job is to exceed the expectations of the employer. So imagine this is not a full resume, but if most of the candidate's resume, they put just some irrelevant experience, that doesn't help them. But if you put a project like this, number one, I think it's highly relevant. It's relevant. You're using the latest data tools, and it's one of the biggest industry in Canada. It's probably the biggest industry in Canadian economy. It continues to be, right? So I don't think many people have the data analytics and business intelligence experience in the real estate industry. And if you have that, and it's easy to have one, and you stand up. Yeah, you stand up. And you can make a statement like that, and you can support it with a project in your portfolio, right? Okay, if no question, I'm going to move to the second case. So the second case is for a company called Jobber. I don't know if we have, members from the province of Alberta. The Jobber is a company based in Jobber Wiki. So this is how I do research. There's very little information. But I think you can still find it. From the company website for sure. Oh, it's called GetJobber. So this is the company website. I think you can get an idea. Trusted by over 200,000 home services professionals. And right here you can see the mentor, lawn care, dirt monkey, everything you can think of. Every trade you can think of, every service you can think of that is related to your property, right? And the other information you can get is, so this is basically a mobile app you can download, and then imagine if you're if you run a small business, mowing people's lawn, for instance, and you can be a painter, or you can be a plumber, right? So you can run a business, from the app. So Jobber is based in, I don't know, I don't remember if it's in Calgary or Edmonton, but the company is actually global. Yeah, the app is downloaded and used all over the world, and it's not a small company. So I search for Jobber valuation. So you can see Jobber closes 100 million, Series D round. So it's pretty significant. It's a great company. You see? So it's a great company. Now, I'd like you to, let me just unshare first and then share with sound. Let me just share again, share sound. So now you should be able to see this. So it's only 3 minutes. Let me play this real quick.
Oh, the first day that we signed up for Monday.com, our department was already able to connect our processes.
I'm Graham with Painters Enterprise, been with Jobber since 2010, basically right from when they started. Let me show you how I use Jobber. The essential workflow in Jobber is a request comes in, I create a quote, schedule the job, create an invoice, and collect payment. Number 1, request. Requests come via my website, a phone call, an email. It's basically just a customer telling me that they need something painted. And I can see all the customer info as well as a description of the work that they need done. From here, I can schedule an on-site assessment or create a quote from it directly. It used to always be a phone call. Now it comes directly into Jobber. Number 2, quote. Creating a quote is easy in Jobber. I can create the quote on my mobile device as I'm on site. And from the work request, I can convert it to a quote and then just add the info in each line item. And I can even include optional line items so the customer has different options. I can send this via email or text and the customer can approve and pay any deposits online, or if they're right here, I can have them sign and approve in person. Some of our clients aren't exactly sure what they want to get painted, and so they want options. So those optional line items are so important to us. Number 3, job. From the quote, I click Create Job, and all of that customer info, line items, anything I entered on the quote, all carries forward. Jobber saves a ton of time of entering info. All I have to do is schedule when the job is going to happen. We do painting, so we have a lot of one-off jobs that may take a day or two, but you can create reoccurring jobs too. If you do lawn care, cleaning, etc., the type of work where you go out on a regular schedule, weekly, bi-weekly, things like that. I can set a specific time and day or leave it open to schedule later. Once it's time to do the work, my employees can see their schedule, see all the information that they need for the job, and even let the customer know that they're on their way. When scheduling the job, you can also set an invoice schedule. If it's a one-off job, you would likely just invoice when the job is finished, but for recurring work, you can set the invoice to happen at the end of each month, each time you go out, or even bi-weekly. It's really nice to be able to batch invoice these jobs all at once because it only takes a few minutes and it saves a ton of time. Jobber makes this process super simple because I don't have to convey all the information personally onto the painters. Jobber does it automatically for me. Number 4, invoice and payment. Once the work is done, invoicing and payment couldn't be easier. From the job, I click Generate Invoice and all of the line items transfer over to the invoice. All I'm really doing is sending it unless there's some changes that need to be made. Again, I can send it via email or text, and the customer can pay online through Jobber's Client Hub. Or I can collect payment on the job site. For me, nothing is more satisfying than getting an email notification that a payment's been made online.
It's everything you wished for. Your site traffic is skyrocketing until...
So I think that is good enough information for you to understand the business process. But now I'm going to show you that, behind every business process, there's a data flow. Behind every business object, and there's a data object. Once you watch that video, I think lots of people can understand if you're not even in this business, but you can still understand the process. Remember, the video mentioning the clients and the request comes in, and then you as a trade or as a small business, you will quote the price, and then you will create the jobs, right? And then the job includes multiple line items. And then each line item may be associated with a service. Okay, so notice that for every service, you can set a price and there's a unit. So this can become complicated when you put them all together. And the job obviously can be scheduled in batch or maybe just one time, one off. And after all the job is done, and you will need to send an invoice, and then the client or the customer will make a payment. You see, and all of these for you, if you are able to create a data model, you will be able to understand or use this data model as a shortcut to understand the business, the process, and the decisions. So I'm going to show you this. If I go back to, and this is in fact how we prepare the student for the interview. So for instance, right here within MySQL Workbench, you can create a database over here. So this is, of course, a much, and let me just clear this. Of course, this is a much simplified data model, but it's enough to showcase, how Jabber works. And first of all, you need to create a database, and then we have the database here, it's empty. And then we can create tables, so we can create clients. So what are the critical information you want to include in clients? I think intuitively, because every table, you need to have an ID, so that's, a no-brainer. You need to put ID. And the ID in clients table means client ID, okay? And then you will need a name for that client, and the phone and email and the physical address. This is definitely important, right? And then you will need to set a primary key. So let's use the ID as the primary key. And by setting the primary and foreign key, you can create that data model through programming. So this is the first data object. The second one is the request. So once again, you have an ID. This is a request ID. And who made the request? You need to have a client ID, right? And the actual request, the description of the request. And then date is important when that request was made. So then you have a primary ID. To answer your question, Jenny, yes, the recording of this session will be made available. Okay, thank you, Radu, for answering that. So for requests, there's a primary key as well. So we have a foreign key right here, and the client ID is the foreign key. So whenever you mention a foreign key, it's in reference to the primary key. So this is in reference to the ID inside the clients table, okay? So services, so you as a small business, or you as the trade provide the service to the client, right? So you have the ID. Now, once again, so these are just services. So services could include painting, plumbing, and so if it's painting, you could have a unit price. So you start to think about how do you define the unit price for painting work? So probably, I don't know, probably by square footage, and then how much per square footage for the wall, right? And maybe for different layers. So it's ID, service, and unit price, and you also have a primary key, and then the quote. So a lot of times you can just use your imagination to think about, and then you can discuss, with the mentor or with somebody, from that industry, or you can use ChatGPT. So quote. So this is quote ID, and a quote must involve client, and this is a quote, for whom, right? So the client ID, and this is the total amount, and we need to pay tax. So tax rate, and so this is the amount plus the tax is total amount. And then once again, you could have multiple different quotes, a revised quote. So you can tell by ID, you can also tell by different date. So this definitely involves client ID. This is foreign key in reference to the ID in clients. Okay, so we have, I don't know if that is a discussion. Let me see. Okay, so there's a bit of discussion about Power BI for free. I'm not going to answer that. Okay, so this is a quote, and next is the job. So what is the difference between quotes and actual jobs? I think most people understand. So you can quote a price, but it could be a cost in the material. The actual job may be slightly different from the quote, right? And that is understood. So you have the actual job, the ID, and once again, the job is for a particular client. And what kind of job is that, right? And the type of the job. So the type of the job could be one-time or recurring, okay? Once again, this is associated with the client ID. So in this case, you could just have one client ID in relation to multiple jobs. So just in case one contract, you want the plumber to fix your faucet, or maybe to also install a kitchen set, for instance. So that could be two jobs, but associated, with one quote. Okay, so then you have to schedule. So for every job ID, you need to set a date, or maybe a time too. But this is the basic information you will need to include in that schedule. And the invoice is after the trade performs the job, and you will need to issue an invoice, send an invoice to the client. So client ID is included, and the amount and tax rate and total amount. So you realize this is very similar to the quote. And the data structure-wise, very similar to the quote, but the actual units and amount may be different, right? Yeah, because the quote is only an estimate, and the invoice shouldn't be drastically different from the quote, but close. Okay, and then you could have the 9 items. So 9 items, can be associated with both quote and job. Actually, with quote, job, invoice, and service. And then here, now this is a similar example is if you go into a grocery store for shopping. So you could have you could check out a mountain of groceries, and then you will have a long receipt, right? So the long receipt will have many different 9 items. Why do you have multiple 9 items? Because you have multiple products. For every 9 item, it could be a product for grocery shopping, but in here, for every 9 item is a different service, right? So you need to have the service ID and the units of that service, right? And the status. The status could be, done, or maybe you signed the contract for somebody to mow your lawn and for the whole year, and then 6 months having the status done, and the remaining 6 months not yet done, right? So you could have that, and then you need to also reference the primary key. So there's ID in quote, ID in jobs, ID in invoice, ID in services, and then the payments. So payment is definitely associated with the invoice ID. So you could make just one payment for 2 invoices, or you could make multiple payments for the same invoice. Either way, it should be okay. You see, after this, you can get a data model like this. So data model is truly really a shortcut to the business model. How can you tell? You see, the clients request a quote, right? And the trades, provide a quote to the client. And the quote includes multiple 9 items, and every 9 item is a service. You see? And the same thing, the jobs are created after the client accepts the quote. So that's the same as contract signed, and the job is created and scheduled. And once again, the jobs involve multiple items, and every item is a service. So after a job is done, and you as a trade will create an invoice and send to client, and you expect the client to make a payment to you. So then the invoice is paid. Question? So this is just one best way for you to learn. Also, we have a long discussion about different visualization tools. Okay, good discussion. Jin Nong Chen prefer Tableau, Looker. There's a constant, debate which tool is better. For me, I think I don't really care. It's better for you to include both Tableau and Power BI. But I personally believe Power BI is getting more popular than Tableau. So over here, data visualization and storytelling is just one of the 10 bullets. You realize that you can't find a job with just one category of skill. So even here, you include Power BI and Tableau. And if you want, you can include Looker or Domo, right? But definitely Power BI and Tableau. But everybody includes Power BI and Tableau. What do you do? What do you do to stand out? So you have to mention things like ETL, data modeling, DAX. If somebody claims that he or she uses Power BI, but when you ask them, have you worked with DAX before? And they say, what's DAX? No, they're the beginners. Yeah. And what about Tableau? Tabular Editor and DAX Studios. These are two plugins. For advanced power users, you just have to know Tabular Editor and DAX Studio. And those of you who have done complex dashboards, you know that the standard visuals that come with Power BI Desktop are not enough, and you will need to know a lot more custom visuals. And you will need to know how to design the shapes and backgrounds and color themes, and even the bookmarks and interaction. So it's a whole UI UX design. And you will need to learn a bit on the design side. For Tableau, table calculation are very important. Level of details, expressions, and filters, parameters, and top. Some of you probably have used Tableau Prep. I think in terms of data preparation or ETL, Tableau is not even close to Power BI. But Tableau is trying to make it up with Tableau Prep. And Tableau Prep is not free. You can use it on a trial basis for 2 weeks. I have used Tableau Prep. I still prefer Power BI to Tableau. Okay, couple questions. Okay, from Petit. Thanks a lot for a very helpful webinar. I wonder how many projects should be in the resume for data analytics engineering, and job applications if you don't have relevant work experience. I normally say quality over quantity, but for entry-level roles, is it okay to have 2 pages resume and fill them with project to show to recruiters that we have relevant hands-on experience for project? Good question. Actually, Two questions. And first, how many projects? And number two, the length of the resume, 1 page or 2 pages. I think you can do 6 or 8 projects, but you cannot, because of the limited space on the resume. And first of all, let me answer the second question. 1 page resume is definitely better than 2 pages. If you really want to get read, and if you really want to get interviewed, doesn't matter how much experience you have, and do it in 1 page. And the probability of the employer reading your second page is very, very low. And if you know that, you should be really, really careful, okay? So if you have only 1 page, but you want to make every single word fight for you and fight for your chance, you can include all 6 projects, but you elaborate and highlight 3 projects, and you mention 3 other projects. So for 3 projects, you want to treat each one like a job, right? Under every project, you can put 2 or 3 bullets, maximum 4. And I prefer 3 bullet points, and sometimes 2 bullet points. And the 3 mentions, just 1 line. 1 project, 1 line. 1 line, 1 project. Just so the purpose of the 3 additional projects is to show the scope of your work. I think that's what you want to communicate. I have done, a good number of projects. That is what you want to say. But the things that you really want to use to impress the employer, you should put under the 3 projects. I don't think people have the patience to read 6 fully fledged projects. So don't do that. And if you have actual work experience involved in data analytics and business intelligence, that's even better. And then you could do 1 job related to DAVI, and then 2 project experience, right? But anyways, doesn't matter if you have 5 years experience or you have no experience, do 1 page resume. And I suggest you still do 2 page, but the resume is on 1 page, and the second page, use it to include the visuals. And business intelligence work is highly, highly visual, and that is the easiest to market. And that is the one best tool to promote yourself, right? So you can do that. I think historically, based on the experience of our students, that really make the students stand out and get interviews. So I hope I answered your question. Any other questions? So we have 12 minutes. You're welcome. Jenny, just search for WeCloudData YouTube, and you will find the channel WeCloudData, and chances are you will see the most recent meetup event and the recording of the most recent meetup event there. From Swati, can you provide us with sample resume formats? Actually, there are multiple formats, many different fonts, but I think don't get too fancy with the formats. Be really, really careful with 2 columns, tables, headers, and footers. Don't do those. I can tell you, the fancier your resume is, the harder you make it for the application tracking system to parse. And it's very easy for the PDF to mess up with your format. So even the writing block and the bullets are all over the place. So the simplest format that works the best. But of course, you can still work with different size of the fonts and different fonts, and also the bold and italic and highlights. You can still use those, and pay attention to the alignments. And once again, form follows the content. The content really matters. A very plain looking resume, as long as it's clear, it's easy to read. Actually, people prefer that. Oh, I can show you one example. People's resume. I believe I have some resume templates for resume samples, maybe. Oh, this one. Okay. So for this one, I erased the name and contact information, but you can still see. So the student includes a summary over here and followed by skills, and then project. So you can see it's 3 by 3. 1 project, 2 project, 3 project, and other project. So every line is a project. And then this is the actual experience. So even though this experience is not that relevant, but it works because the upper half of the resume already communicate enough, right? And then the education. So the second page look like this. It's portfolio sample. You got it? For the first page, you could include a link to your portfolio. So when once people just need to take one look at the second page. They don't need to spend that much time, but that one look is very impactful, because when you read this, it looks strong. But I have a couple resumes, they all look pretty strong, but oh wow, this is something. I think at least I want to see this candidate, right? And that's all you need. That's all you need. The purpose of your resume is to get an interview. Remember that. So this is what I meant by 2 pages. The actual resume takes 1 page, and the second page is for you to show your work sample. But they're all visuals, and there's no point for you to show the code, and nobody will read the code. Okay, and Arkeen question: do you work with companies for placement and internship opportunity? A short answer is yes. So first of all, WeCloudData, we grow a big community. We have been running boot camps for years, and our alumni, our previous students, and they start a job in the data space, and they build a career in data space, and they grow and they get promoted. And some of them are in the hiring position, and they prefer to hire from us because they know the quality. And some of them are probably on the hiring team, and they at least can influence the hiring decisions, or at least they can fast track your resume and put in the hands of the hiring manager. So that all helps. So this is one thing. And the other thing is, you mentioned internship. So WeCloudData actually has 2 subsidiaries and fully owned subsidiaries. So one is called WeCareer.ai. So WeCareer is fully responsible for placement. And there's another one, beamdata.ai. Thank you, Adam. Beamdata.ai is a consulting company fully owned by WeCloudData. So we provide our students with the opportunity to work on real projects for the real clients. And the clients are both large organizations and small startup companies. And we work with Mars in Toronto. You know, Mars is the biggest incubator in Toronto. We work with Communitech, and Communitech is associated with University of Waterloo. It's also an incubator. Now, some startup companies, they don't have a data team. They fully depend on our students to, build things for them. And we do all kinds of projects that, sometimes the project requires data analysts, business intelligence consultant, and data engineer, data scientists to work together. And we can provide all of them. And we hire full-time project managers and technical lead to ensure the quality of the work. As you can imagine, students come and go. They come, they join the project at a certain stage. They work 3 months. Some of them are looking for work at the same time. So once they find jobs and they leave. So students come and go, and we want to minimize the interruption to the client and to the project. And that's the reason why we hire full-time project manager and technical lead to manage the client relationships. So the clients come from both Canada and US, and some of the contract is actually quite big. But we provide low-cost consulting, and the only reason we do this is to give our students the opportunity to work on a real project. And for the most recent graduates, if you have zero experience, I think working on the real project for the real client can definitely boost your chances of getting interviews and passing interviews. Yeah. 3 minutes to go. Do we have any last minute question? If not, let me give you my LinkedIn profile. Just 1 second. I like to connect with some of you if you're winning. I think the connection is permanent on LinkedIn. It's good. This is my LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with me and schedule meeting with me to discuss your. I think this still the previous link was Indeed. One more time. Okay, so this is my LinkedIn profile, and please feel free to schedule a meeting with me. Let me just give you my calendar. If you click this link, and it's pretty easy for you to schedule, meeting with me, and I can give you some advice. And if you sent me your email, your resume, I will be prepared for the meeting. So we can discuss your career path and your next move, and what is the best way, what is the most time-saving, learning path, and what are the options. What is economically viable and shortest path to get what you wanted. Yes, so feel free to schedule a session with me. And by the way, I am one of the 4 co-founders. at WeCloudData, and this is my business, and this is also my passion. So your wish is my command, and I feel good, if any help I provide can make a difference in your career. Thank you. It's 10 o'clock. I thank you for your time and hope you learn something, have something to take home. So let's remain connected. Thanks a lot.